Hello, my name is Cassandra, and in this video I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide on how to start writing a story. First of all, there are three types of writers: the plotters, the pantsers, and the hybrid writers. The plotters are the ones who plot. They have an outline with what's going to happen in their story. The pantsers are the ones who open a document and just start typing. And the hybrid writers are the ones who do both. They have a couple of things in mind before they start writing, and then they let inspiration take the lead. If you are a very organized person, you can try the plotting method, so you can start with an outline of your story, but you can try to wing it as well. I am very organized, but I work best with the hybrid method. So I plan a little bit the world building of my story. I definitely know my characters and their background story, their secrets, their weaknesses. I know how I want my story to end, but I don't know all the details that go in between all the events from beginning until the end. Remember that writing should never be a chore. It should never be something that you struggle with. So if you find yourself struggling, maybe change your method or change your mindset. The mindset is a big topic and I will cover more when I talk about the drafts. But another thing you need to know before you start writing is that you do not need to have a message. You do not need to have a higher purpose in order to write. Perhaps you love fights with robots and you want to write your own story because you have this crazy idea in your head and you want to see it happening on paper. And you want others to read it and become passionate with the robotic adventures. When I was doing research in order to write a story, I found many videos and articles that talked about knowing your theme and your message and how you need to connect everything to that theme. And this discouraged me so much in the beginning, because I had no idea what my theme was. I just wanted to write a story that I felt passionate about. So don't worry about having a message and a theme. You will figure it out in the future, in the following drafts, which is what we're going to talk about now. When we write a story, it is a process that's divided in drafts. The first draft is basically writing the events that are happening in the story from beginning until the end. And it's the first step and the most important one, and that many writers unfortunately abandon midway because they have the wrong mindset. The trick is, when writing the first draft, remember, you don't need good grammar, you don't need good spelling. You can write in the worst way you can imagine. All that's important is to write the events, nothing else. Just write what's happening in your story from beginning until the end. Don't worry of how you're going to phrase it, of how your writing is going to have the most impact on your readers. Just write the events. The reason that you don't need to worry about how you write your story in the first draft is because when you move to the second draft, you will rewrite the whole thing, which is also another reason that you need to love the story that you are writing, because you will read everything from beginning until the end quite a few times. In the second draft, you will make corrections about things that changed while writing the first draft. I am not sure how it goes with the plotters, although I think they also have changes like the ones I'm going to talk about now. While writing the first draft, I actually discovered my world, the world of my story, more in the process. and some very important elements of my story changed. As a result, I had to go back to the beginning and change some things that were no longer valid. However, you should not do that while writing the first draft. The first draft will bring many changes to the surface, and what you need to do is take all those changes and write them in a notebook, away from your first draft. Don't make the corrections at that time. When you're writing the first draft, it's just the first draft. Everything that changes, though, you need to keep notes. Otherwise, you will have a great difficulty figuring out what is going on in your story. I personally have a character who, in the first chapters, had magical abilities. But then I realized that this cannot happen because his powers shouldn't make sense to exist because this and that. But I realized this after at least 5 chapters. So in the first 5 chapters, that guy had magical powers. And then I said, oh no. So I wrote this down and I continued the story without him having powers. The powers that he had did not change the plot in any significant way. Otherwise, I would have to go back. If the events completely changed, then I would have, although I would think about it first. If there is a way to explain where my characters are now without his magical abilities, then I would not go back to change everything. To give you a more specific example, in one of the earlier chapters, this guy who had magical abilities had to use his abilities in order to save the protagonist. And his abilities basically created these flames and burned many people. So my protagonist survived and then they moved on to their journey. However, this thing, the protagonist surviving, can also happen without the guy's magical abilities. With some luck and some physical combat, it can happen. So I did not go back in order to change this event, but I have written that this character doesn't have magical abilities. So when I go and start the second draft, I will start making the changes. This process can take 2, 3, 4 drafts. It depends on what changes are happening in your story and how much your characters change. And when I say characters change, I don't mean character development. I mean like the example of my guy who didn't have magical powers. And eventually, when the plot is all good and the characters are stable and they have their character development as the story progresses, then in one of the drafts, you will start adding color to your story. You will write more vivid descriptions, you will correct any spelling, grammar mistakes. That's why you should not concern yourself with these things from the beginning. There are actually books on the different drafts of the writing process, and I will link some of them in the video description. Now that you have understood how the writing process goes, let's talk about the steps that you need in order to create a story. Step number 1 is to write the premise of your story, to answer the who, the what, and why. Who is your protagonist? What is their goal? What do they want to do? And why is what is their motivation? What is going to happen if they don't succeed in their goal? This is also known as the stakes. What are the stakes? What's at risk? The premise is what you find at the back cover of the book, and that makes you decide whether you want to read it or not. But you're not going to write the premise for an agent or a publishing company. You're going to write it for you in order to start writing the story. When the time comes to pitch your book to an agent, then you're going to work on it again. But don't make the writing of the premise as a process that needs to be perfect. Remember that all of this is for you. It is for you to have a clear idea on what your story is about. Now, stories usually have a specific structure. There is the 5 story beats that I explain in another video. It's a good idea to have in mind how stories generally work. It's also very good to see other stories, either through movies or books or radio drama, and take notes. Notice when the inciting incident happens, what is the climax, and all those steps that exist in the structure of stories. Something that you need to know before you start writing your story is the inciting incident. This is the moment when everything changes for your protagonist, and they now have to face obstacles and conflict in order to achieve their goal. I have another video where I discuss the inciting incident of a few movies and a TV show. This is basically the beginning of their journey. You want to include the inciting incident early on in your story because that's what's going to make the readers keep reading. That's what's going to make them interested, invested. But at the same time, you want first to make the protagonist relatable to your readers. Because if your protagonist is unlikable, if the readers cannot connect to your protagonist, then they will not care to see if your protagonist is going to achieve their goal. There are also thrillers and other types of stories where the inciting incident has already happened and information is revealed through memories or other things that move the plot forward. I find this more tricky to do, especially for beginner writers, but maybe you are a natural. You never know, so experiment. Then you have your characters and your protagonist. It's good to have their background story, to know their fears, their traumas, things that I can use in my story in order to create conflict, in order to create obstacles. But some writers just start writing and let the character unfold in the page. This process hasn't helped me personally, but I have found that even if I have already written in details what my character's backstory is, how they grew up, their weaknesses, strengths, when I start writing them on paper, they may show different colors. So you need to roll with it. I roll with it. And it has helped me. It has made my story more impactful. But of course, as the characters changed, I also had to make changes in their backstory in order to fit what was happening on page. More specifically, this guy with the magical powers, he was supposed to be the comedic relief in my story, but he did not. He actually has a very dark past now. And he's completely different from what I had originally envisioned. And that's good. The end result is very good. So go with whatever your characters reveal to you. I have a long video on character creation and I have created a character sheet that you can find in our Facebook group at Sacred Order of Writers. There is both PDF in order to print it, but also in document form in order to edit it on your computer. Another important element that a story needs is conflict. You cannot have a story without conflict. Your protagonist wants something, and it's your job to create obstacles, one after another. Build a huge wall and see just how willing your protagonist is in order to achieve their goal. You have to make it impossible. You have to give them internal conflict, play with their emotions, give them what they fear most, make them make decisions that they would hate themselves afterwards, and external conflict, an enemy, an opposition, the weather, technology, It all depends on the kind of story that you're writing. I will link a longer video on conflict in the description, but one thing you need to remember is that conflict needs to be relevant to your plot. What this means is that it doesn't matter if your protagonist has a car accident and breaks his leg, as long as he doesn't need to run. Conflict becomes even more powerful when it's personal. Another step for writing a story is extra plotting for plotters when it comes to the setting of your world building, even chapters, as I mentioned earlier. I have an outline structure, again in the Facebook group, that you can download for free. And finally, it's a good thing to know your ending. It's a very good thing, but not everyone does it, and it also depends on what works for you. However, I personally find it good to have an idea of where you want your story to go. I am not saying necessarily to know whether your protagonist is going to win or to lose, but at least to know the final location of your story. Where is the final battle going to take place? It's a good idea to know the final destination, otherwise you may get lost, because writing is a journey, and going through your character's journey without a map is hard enough. But if you don't even know where the end destination is, then you may be going in circles and not even realize it. Of course, everything starts with experimentation. So experiment, try things, be open to everything new, and most importantly, start writing. It doesn't matter if you are uncertain, it doesn't matter if you are afraid, if you think or if you don't have the skills to write a story, start writing, and you will see in the process you will become better. You will understand more things, you will understand how stories work, and in the end you will have something that you can be proud of because you put in the effort even when you didn't know what the result was going to be. So go against your insecurities and start writing. Remember all the things we said about the first draft, and don't try to be perfect in any way. Just let your characters lead you in their journey and write the story. I hope this video is helpful to you. Let me know in the comments if there is any question that you have or anything that you would like me to analyze more. Hit the like button if you're going to start writing your story after this video ends, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye bye.